not the kind that involves economics, but the kind that involves the life stream from an infant through his first 2 or 3 years of life. I've worked with children who are on the autism spectrum for a very long time, but I hadn't known when I first started to work with these children how important it was to understand neuroscience. In fact, when I was in medical school, I skipped neuroscience. I did just a lot of psychiatry instead, because it didn't seem to be particularly relevant to the kind of work we did in psychiatry. But lo and behold, now all I can do is think about ways to find out from my neuroscience colleagues just what is happening in the brain of an autistic child. What is happening in the brain of this child that doesn't allow this child to be on the typical developmental trajectory? Not the economic one, but the one in which a child learns how to have emotions, had to think, had to feel, and had to be able to put those feelings into thoughts, and then put them into thoughts so that their parents can understand them and be able to understand what their parents are asking of them. It sounds pretty simple if you're raising a child who is typically developing. But now we are seeing an explosion, as you know, of autism spectrum disorder. Only a year ago, there were 1 in 80 births of autism, and now there are 1 in 55 at the current time, with a ratio of about 4 boys to 1 girl. That's pretty standard. We have to help these children, but how? They have a neurological disorder. We don't know what it is, but there's something in their brain that doesn't allow them to develop. I'd like to try to help explain it. If I explain it to you, maybe I'll understand it a little better. We know that the major issue we see with an autistic child is that they seem socially incompetent or socially out of tune or socially lacking in empathy. There are all kinds of words people use, or they have no theory of mind, which means they can't read your mind, they can't read mom's mind, and they feel like they can't be read. I'll start with a very simple example of something that's not really social. Imagine a little baby, he's in his crib or his playpen, and he picks up a rattle. He shakes the rattle, it looks pretty, and his mom's sitting over there, and she's so excited because now her baby's done a new trick. Well, while he's picking up that rattle, his brain is doing a number of things. It's registering a signal to his muscle, picking up. It's registering the visual, the auditory, and the pleasure and reward system in showing off for his mother. We have an old saw. When you have neurons, you know what neurons are, neurons that fire together, wire together, which means that connections are made, kind of like going from New York City to Long Island, as the gentleman said. And once those connections are made, they're there for life. Now a baby can pick up a rattle, a toy, an iPad, anything he likes, but he won't have to think about it. And it has no repercussions in the social world unless his mother says, enough of the iPad. But as far as picking things up, he can do that whether he's a typical child, and this is important, or a child on the autism spectrum. Because though children have no more difficulty picking up a rattle or doing anything motoric, if you know any autistic children, you know that they're perfectly capable and facile with things, with cars, with toys, with iPads, in fact, and all kinds of computer equipment that I don't know how to understand how to operate at all. But let me give you an example where an autistic child has a lot of trouble, which leads us to our central thought for today, that if a child can't develop some kind of symbolic functioning about people as opposed to understanding how objects work, he loses the capacity to relate to his family, starting with relating to his mother. So again, picture the same little baby lying in his crib, hungry. He wakes up hungry, starts crying. His mother comes to the door. She's either got a breast or a bottle to feed him. She goes to the crib quickly. She picks him up. He starts feeding. As soon as the nipple is in his mouth, he's happy as a clam. He's satisfied. Mother's satisfied too because she feels confident. I know how to feed this baby. And now the baby is firing and wiring all those same components. He acted on the world. There's cause and effect. He made mother come. He has feelings about the being cuddled and held. So actually more systems are firing than picking up a rattle. Now, interestingly, the baby has a new kind of experience, which is that, oh, my mother's at the door when I'm hungry, and oh, look, I see my mother, I know I'm going to be fed. The cause and effect part has already taken over, and he stops crying when she arrives at the door. This is really the most important thing we can learn about development, because what's happening is that there's now a space, like pause 10 seconds, where the baby recognizes the mother, not really knowing, because his brain hasn't myelinated, but he recognizes from a pattern that he's now going to be fed. And he doesn't need to cry, because mom will come and feed him. And she can represent, by standing at the door, this whole picture of the wiring and firing of being fed and satisfied. Autistic children, we think, don't have that capacity, or they may have some of that capacity, but not enough to carry them through the first couple of years of life. So picture a baby who cannot understand that mother at the door represents help is on the way. What does he do? The next day when she comes, instead of help is on the way, which she would expect from him, it's all new. It's a surprise. How many of you like surprise parties? Raise your hands. And how many of you hate surprise parties? Well, for an autistic child, every minute of every day is like a surprise party. It's all new all the time. Now imagine if you were the mother of such a child, how frustrating that would be, because the expectations that your baby would learn would have a learning curve for being fed, a learning curve for following your expectations, your demands, trying new foods, going to sleep on time, being toilet trained. There's something that happens in the brain of the autistic child that doesn't allow him to see these patterns and to use them going forward throughout his day, his week, and his life. I would like to tell you how hard it is for a mother and a baby to survive without being frustrated, angry, and disappointed in each other for days, weeks,